Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Angry Astronaut. I have the pleasure of speaking with Pavlo Tanasyuk from Spacebit. He is the CEO of this organization that has the distinguishing mission of sending the first mission from the United Kingdom to the moon. And they are not just sending one mission, they are sending two this year. So we're very excited about this, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And yes, we're sending not one but two missions to the moon.
Could you tell us some more about these missions, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two rovers flying later this year. One is the legged rover and one is the rover on wheels. Obviously, the legged rover is not only the first UK mission, but also the first ever rover to have a different type of locomotion using legs instead of wheels. They're basically mimicking us mammals and animals from this planet. So that's an interesting angle as well. So the first mission is with Astrobotic. It's a US company flying on United Launch Alliance rocket, Vulcan rocket, and landing at a near Lacus Mortis. The second mission, not less interesting, with Intuitive Machines, is another company from US. Both of those companies, Astrobotic and Intuitive Machines, are part of the CLIPS program and basically supported by NASA. And we are flying with them, firstly catching a ride on a SpaceX flight and then hopefully riding all the way to safely land on the moon.
Wonderful. Well, it tends to be one of the characteristics of my channel to ask unconventional sorts of questions, so I kind of get started right away. Your first mission is going to be going on the maiden flight of the Vulcan Centaur, and which is a rocket that I strongly support, by the way, but it is the maiden voyage. Does that give you any sort of trepidations?
We lost our slip many months ago, so it's not adding any additional pressure on our schedule or what we do. In terms of the maiden flight, I mean, everything is happening for the first time in a way. So definitely there is a risk involved, but ULA is the respectable company, and I believe that the risk associated with the actual launch is not the highest risk if you look at the whole mission profile. So we're kind of happy to be launched on ULA. We have to kind of design our rover slightly different for those two missions because they have different vibration profile, and ULA is a larger rocket, and as it is a larger rocket, we have slightly more vibrations. But we kind of in good hands, and I believe that it's going to be a successful launch.
Wonderful. Well, I share your positive feelings about the whole thing. Actually, I also feel pretty positive about ULA and SpaceX and the Falcon 9, for that matter, for your second mission. A question from one of my supporters is, why legs? You have so many joints and other complexities with this sort of thing. Everybody else has always done wheels. Why did you go with legs?
Yeah, well, sometimes we do regret that we have chosen legs because it's a very rigorous task and obviously complicated, as you said. And there are many technical issues that we had to solve in order to be able to fly this rover to the moon. But I believe that it's very important that we send the rover with legs for various reasons. One of them is that some parts of the moon have quite a rugged terrain, so it's almost impossible to use wheels, especially if you want to go into the lava tubes that you have on the moon. So that's why we have legs, so you can basically jump on rocks and go to some less accessible places where you can't really drive. And I believe that both types of locomotions, that they have their own advantages decided to have a legged rover for various reasons. One of the reasons is that the moon has a very rugged terrain, and especially in some places, and lava tubes. And one of our goals is actually to go and explore lava tube, maybe not during the first flight, but in the future. And you can't really use wheels if you want to go to those places, because there are many rocks, and it's kind of, you need to climb basically. But we believe that it's a complementary type of locomotion to wheels. And if you want to go long distance, you ride a car and then you go and climb a mountain. Same approach here. Our third mission actually will have a Mothership rover, and it will have small robots with legs inside. And basically we will drive to a place of exploration. We will deploy smaller legged robots. They will go and explore, come back, recharge, and maybe survive a lunar night. But it is indeed a technical challenge, and a very challenging task to create robots with, especially such tiny robots with legs, because obviously we're using specific motors designed exclusively for this mission, and we didn't have those motors before. So everything has to be almost designed from scratch, basically, for this robot.
It sounds very challenging. What do you expect to find in these lava tubes? On Mars, they're thinking water ice. Are you thinking perhaps the same thing there on the moon?
Probably not near Lacus Mortis, maybe in south regions, but in Lacus Mortis and kind of in those places where we go during our first and second flights, it's quite unlikely to find stable water, but probably we will be able to do some interesting science inside, because you can imagine that those lava tubes, they're empty for billions and billions of years. There is no basically major disturbances, because there is no atmosphere on the moon. So you can go and see how the moon has formed potentially, and solve some of the mysteries that we have about formation of our universe as well. Commercially, it's also interesting task, because if you want to live on the moon in the future, you have to find a place, a feasible place to live. And one of the options is to build something on the surface. Other option would be to actually seal the entrance to the lava tube and live inside, which might be a very interesting option, as the temperature inside of the lava tubes presumably is more or less stable, maybe minus 30 from what we know. And that's reasonably nice environment if you compare that to the lunar surface, where you can get deviations from minus 170 Celsius to plus 130. So definitely a nice place to be if you're on the moon.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. So, what sort of scientific equipment can you put on these little rovers?
Yeah, we actually have quite a few sensors. We have temperature sensors, more than one. We have one which is actually on the toe of the leg, so we can go and measure what's this inside of the regolith in terms of the temperature. Then we have a couple of cameras. We have radiation sensor. We have very basic radio telescope actually as well, and probably we will have a spectrometer there as well. So that's something that we are designing. There's already a spectrometer available on the market, which is quite tiny. Never been used in space, but now we're looking into possibility of using that spectrometer on our mission.
Great. And what about the mothership? What sort of equipment are you going to be having on that?
Well, that's the third mission, so we're a little bit kind of away from the launch, but maybe we will add more sophisticated instruments that I already told you about, and even actually hyperspectral sensor can be more advanced, because here we have to kind of compromise between the weight and the quality of measurements. But on a larger rover, we don't have to do such a trade-off. But we potentially can fit more instruments and maybe do some basic even drilling in some parts to see what we can find. So I believe it will equip us a bit better, and we'll have more options in terms of what we can fit. As now we really limited by size and weight factor, and we are not free to put every payload, every scientific instrument that we would like.
If you were in a perfect world, if you had all the cargo you would want, about how heavy would this be if you had the mothership plus the rovers? What would be the total payload in the future?
Well, I believe that even in ideal world, it shouldn't be too heavy. So we're not talking about kind of Soviet era lunokhod, which is like a ton or more than that. It should be relatively capped. And in our case, I would be happy with probably 50 kilograms. 50 to 70 kilograms is the good enough mass to be able to fit all the equipment that we need and be able to run the mission smoothly. Obviously, as you know, the price of deliver to the moon is quite high. So we're paying just over $1 million per kilogram.
Yes.
So that's quite an expensive price to pay. So we'll have to figure out the ways to fund our Mission 3.
Gotcha. In terms of carriers, I mean, aside from the obvious players for your future missions, given that, this is a UK operation, have you ever considered carriers like Virgin Orbit, for example? I mean, they're an American company officially, but at the same time, they'll be operating out of Spaceport Cornwall in the future. And I was just curious if you've ever considered some of those smaller type carriers, them, Rocket Lab, etc.
I don't believe that as they are now, they have enough velocity to get us to the moon or lander to the moon. So that would be a problem. But if they develop and create more powerful launching vehicles, especially Electron had probably that potential capacity for smaller payloads, then we would be happy to fly with them as well. So we don't really put any limitations in terms of the rockets or companies. We are quite open. It's a new market, and there will be more entrants to those markets. So yeah, we're quite open.
Well, since we're speaking about an evolving market, obviously there is a lot evolving in the United Kingdom between yourselves and Skyrora and, Virgin Orbit, Virgin Galactic. Like I say, even though they're officially American companies, there's obviously a great deal of British influence behind that. How does that make you feel? Do you think that this is going to inspire any sort of sense of national pride in the UK now that this is starting to happen?
Well, that's my hope, and we really want to reach out and to be able to kind of tell this story to every child, to every student, and people who are interested in space, and maybe people who will be interested in space after our flight. So that's the goal, and if we can inspire in a way how Apollo flight inspired everyone in the US back in the days, and even internationally, then it would be definitely a very good thing to do. And I have quite high expectations in terms of that, and I hope that people will like what we do and support us.
Well, I certainly feel the same. A high percentage of my subscribers are from the UK, so I'm hoping that I can increase some, in some small way, increase a little bit of exposure for your organization. A question from one of my supporters: where do you see yourselves in 5 to 7 years? What kind of missions do you see yourself doing that far in the future?
Well, probably we will have more sophisticated missions, and we are as a company that is building small robots. So it's a very good approach even for large organizations to run some interesting missions. And with our robots, you can take a risk. You can send this payload to places where you would not normally send the rover, and you can risk basically with this cheaper and smaller payload, and you can send more of them and you can explore more. So we hope that the price of the launch and landing services to the moon will go down, and as the actual final price of our rover will be going down as well. We hope that even at the university level, our robots will be accessible in the near future. In 5-7 years, well, maybe some wealthy universities will be able to afford our services to the moon. That would be nice. But also from the scientific and commercial perspective, we see quite a few interesting areas. Some of it is the gray area in terms of the law and legal affairs on the lunar surface, but that's a separate point of discussion. But that is an interesting field of experimentation as well.
Great. Thank you for that. Let's see. I am making sure that I am covering, bear with me here, the questions that I have from my supporters. Oh, yes. Do you foresee that that what you have can also perhaps be used on an asteroid or Mars?
On Mars, probably we will need the larger rovers, larger spiders, and David Bowie's song "Spiders on Mars" might actually finally come true. In terms of the asteroids, well, yes, actually they're much better suited for smaller celestial bodies than wheeled robots, because if you want to move and you're crawling and basically you're moving in a way that you can slowly transcend those other worlds. Why, if you have wheels and you drive on the surface, because the gravity is so low, then if you hit something, you're just going to be bouncing from the surface. And that's why having legs actually can help in a low gravity environments, such as moon or even asteroids. Obviously, our technology will have to improve, and we will have to have more sensitive sensors and motors as well. But that's feasible, and it's probably a very good environment for future applications of the legged robotics.
Thank you for that. Another question from a supporter, and this, you can feel free to answer this or not, obviously. The financing for your future explorations, because has this been allocated for your future missions in years to come, or is that still something that's in process beyond these first two?
Yeah, well, for a company of our size, securing 2 missions to the moon is already a big deal. Not that many governments have been to the moon, as we know. US, Soviet Union, and China successfully landed on the moon, and Israel tried but failed. So it's a big deal for a small company like Spacebit to be able to run not 1 but 2 missions already. So in terms of the future financing, obviously we have some funds to do some preliminary designs and maybe get it to the level of critical design for the next missions. But we will be looking for new investors and the ways to fund our venture, and hopefully British government will recognize us as the important player in this field and support us as well.
Well, I certainly hope that also, obviously. Another question from a supporter. The name of the rover, Asagumo, is part of the popular Japanese proverb saying, "Morning spider brings fortune, night spider comes as a thief." Is that anything you'd be interested in commenting on in terms of your inspiration?
Absolutely. I mean, the actual name decision was made when I was in Japan, and it was during the time where we were kind of thinking what kind of rover we're gonna send to the moon, and we said, okay, it's gonna be a leg robot. And then I have a friend in Japan who told me this proverb, and I said, well, that's fantastic, because actually we're landing during the lunar morning, in a way. It's the second Thursday of the lunar day, which is almost 2 weeks. So it's going to be morning, and we will have a morning spider on the moon. So I said, well, why not? Let's name it Asagumo.
Wow, that's an intriguing story. I have to admit, that's neat stuff. Thank you for answering that question. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure. I think I've got a lot of these covered at this point, but I just want to make certain that I've covered everything that from them before I go on with anything in terms of myself. Yeah, I do believe that that's pretty much covered. So what other applications and benefits to Artemis do you see your product bringing? I mean, obviously, exploring lava tubes, that sort of thing, and also kind of connected to that, you've apparently experimented with these rovers in lava tubes on Earth, and I was wondering if you could comment on that as well. So kind of a two-part question.
Yes, I mean, in terms of experimenting on Earth, that's very important, because analog testing and kind of going into the lava tubes and seeing how it works, it's something that we won't be able to do on the moon. So we learned a lot during those tests, and we did them, and we will be doing more of that during the summertime, just final preparation before the launch. And in terms of the NASA Artemis program, we believe that in the future, near future, robots will be working alongside humans on the moon and other planets. So we believe that our company will be playing one of the major roles in that, and there will be need for robots explorers, robots who will do servicing, robots will carry the loads, robots who will help humans. So it's not about robots versus human exploration, it's about how robots can support and can actually enhance the Artemis program, which is based around the human space flight. And that's why actually robotic exploration is a very important step during this phase. And also after we successfully bring human back to the moon and bring them to space, and robots will be actually helping a lot.
Great, thank you very much. This perhaps should have been a question that came right at the beginning, but I'll ask it now. It's how did you get to this point in your personal development where you just decided, you know what, I want to put robots on the moon? What inspired you to do this?
Well, I have a little bit of Elon Musk's story. I also run a payment system in Europe, and when I sold it, I decided that I want to do space-related activities. Obviously, it was my dream from my childhood. I was born in Ukraine, in the town where Korolev was born, and Korolev is the man who put the first satellite and first man in orbit. And I had a lot of influence of space-related activities during my childhood in Ukraine before moving to the UK. So it was obvious. It was obvious that I just do it when I had the choice. I didn't think even for a minute. I just decided that, well, let's do it. And in terms of the moon, obviously, at the time when the decision was made, it was still early. We didn't have a company flying to the moon, and it was kind of borderline crazy in a way. But as time progressed, a few years back, after Google X Prize kind of and everything, we had a few companies such as Astrobotic and 2 Machines who actually were able to raise money, and then obviously they got support from NASA, and now they're flying to the moon. So it's a gradual process with some kind of strong beliefs at the beginning, which came into the fruition a bit later. But without hopes and dreams, it wouldn't be possible today.
Well, now that I know this about your background, I need to ask another question then. And like I say, feel free to not answer it. If Korolev had not died an untimely death, do you feel the way that Yuri Gagarin did, that Yuri Gagarin would have been the first man on the moon and not Neil Armstrong?
It's a good question, but I believe that also the rocket H1, which you're referring to, was a bit kind of too early in terms of the time. I mean, at the moment, if you look at the Falcon rockets and I don't know some other larger rockets who have multiple engines, they're quite successfully managing those engines because they have new computer technology, and you can do that. In terms of H1, you had so many engines. Some of them were working not up to the performance you were expecting, and you didn't really have enough technological capacity to do that at the time. So I believe that it was a great design, but maybe a little bit too early, so not necessarily bringing Yuri Gagarin faster to the moon and a lunar surface. But now I believe that design has potential, and maybe it's someone will repeat and build a similar rocket. It's more possible now than back in the days.
Well, this may indeed happen. I'll be going back to Boca Chica. I'm pretty certain you're referring to the super heavy stage of the Starship and all the engines it has. But I'll be going back to Boca Chica actually in a few days to see that. But in any event, that's going off topic. All right. Is there anything else that you would like the world to know about your mission? For me to share with my subscribers, things that make you unique, things that you would like people to know.
Release our software and parts of our hardware is an open source. So we will make a depository, and people will be able to contribute and run similar missions using our software that we developed and using our hardware that we developed. So that is quite unique. And we are not afraid of competition, so we will actually make certain aspects of our mission publicly available, and we will open it for people to contribute and actually improve our designs and work on it, and maybe launch their own missions to the moon as well.
All right. Well, that concludes the interview, unless you had any other comments to make.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your program. It's a pleasure. And please follow us on our social media, and we will be happy to get pictures from the lunar surface at the end of this year.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, and thank you so much for joining us. So, an exciting mission to say the least, and I will continue to follow it here on this channel. So, until next time, and as always, stay angry about space!